Hello and welcome to LFC Focus. Liverpool are taking on Porto. They are back in Champions League action on Tuesday night at Anfield in the second leg of our round of 16 tie. And as we all know, Liverpool have got things pretty much wrapped up with the first leg victory. They lead 5-0 on aggregate from that first leg. This tie really should just be a procession from here on in, you know. It should be the kind of game that Liverpool just see out, no fuss whatsoever, like we've been dispatching all these Premier League teams at Anfield over the last few weeks. I think it's hard to get excited because it's a Champions League tie at Anfield and it's the kind of game that you really, really want to be up for. You want to see the crowd going absolutely wild for every single tackle, every single goal, every single chance. But it's kind of not going to be that way because it will feel, I think, a little bit like a pre-season friendly, you know, unless Porto do something mad and score like 3 goals in the first few minutes. And that is one thing that Liverpool do have to watch out for at the end of the day, because while people are arguing that we should rest players, we've got United at the weekend. That's obviously a massive tie in the Premier League. They're pretty much our direct rivals for second place at the moment, and it's a big game in terms of it's a 6-pointer in the race for the top 4 and stuff like that. So everyone's talking about how Liverpool should have one eye on that, but I think at the end of the day, teams like Real Madrid and Bayern Munich and Barcelona, the teams that are really competing at the business end of the Champions League, the teams that you consider as front runners for the competition, they batter people in the first leg all the time at this stage of the competition, and they never ever let up for the second legs. I mean, you just look at what Bayern did to Arsenal. I think it was even last season, beat them 5-1 at home. Did Bayern go to the Emirates and think, we'll play the kids and play for a draw, something like that? No, they went out and absolutely did Arsenal over again, won 5-1 again, because that's what the best teams do. At the end of the day, you've got to send out a message, and if Liverpool just let this game peter out and go for a bore draw or something like that, or just lose by a couple of goals, that's not really sending out the right message to whoever we get in the quarterfinals. They're not going to look at that game and think, oh crikey, we got Liverpool. But if we do what we did against Porto in the first leg and absolutely hammer them again, no one is going to want Liverpool in the quarterfinals. So at the end of the day, it is about sending out a message. And I think as well, we don't really need to rest players. I mean, when you consider what Liverpool, the situation we were in when we were rotating earlier on in the season, we were playing much more consistently than this. We were playing weekend, midweek, constantly, even playing something like 3 games a week at times over the Christmas period. And it was done, we were rotating to avoid what happened last season when we had a massive dip over the Christmas period. But now we're not playing weekend and midweek every single week. We just have the odd midweek match with the Champions League coming in. And when you compare it to the rest of our top 4 rivals, when you compare it to Tottenham, Chelsea and Manchester United, they've actually got more difficult schedules than us because they've all got to deal with the FA Cup as well, which, as we know, Liverpool are out of. So if anyone, they're going to be the teams that are playing that constant weekend midweek cycle. And then Arsenal, I mean, they're not really rivals for the top 4 anymore. They're 15 points behind us. It feels silly to even consider us, but they are still somewhere in that sort of melee of teams trying to get into the Champions League spots. And they're doing the Thursday-Sunday routine week in, week out pretty much. So Liverpool actually don't have it too bad. And I think the odd midweek game here or there isn't actually going to do us any harm and could actually do us a little bit of a bonus, really, because, you know, playing that much means that you can actually build up a bit of consistency. And if there's one thing that's helped Liverpool recently, I think it's being able to play the same team week in, week out. We're better than we were when we were rotating because we're playing that same team. They're building up an understanding with each other. The defence is well organised. The midfield is just steamrolling teams at the moment, and the attack is virtually telepathic. So if you ask me, I think Liverpool should be going pretty much full strength for this game. Jurgen Klopp seemed to suggest a similar idea in his press conference today. He didn't say that Liverpool would be ringing the changes and throwing in loads of kids and stuff like that. I think he said it was a maximum of 3 changes he'd make to the starting 11, so no more than we've really seen Jurgen Klopp make when he's just been thinking about, you know, rotating to see who fits where and making up for the odd injury and stuff like that. I don't think we are going to see a massive overhaul of the side, and I completely back Jurgen Klopp on that. As for any other injury news and stuff like that, Gini Wijnaldum and Ben Woodburn are out. It's a bit of a shame about Ben Woodburn because I think if you are going to make any changes, if you're keeping the rest of the first team, it'd be good to just drop someone like Ben Woodburn in there who hasn't got too much experience but would certainly benefit from the experience of playing a Champions League game. So sadly, no Ben Woodburn. I would have thought about maybe Gini Wijnaldum playing in this game as well because it is at home. It's still a big game because it's the Champions League, and obviously he didn't play at the weekend because he's got the runs, shall we say. I think that's how Jurgen Klopp Klopp had to put it. It sounds like, sadly, poor Genie is still suffering there, so all the best to him. I think it's the same with Ben Woodburn as well. Hopefully they recover soon. But yeah, no Genie Van Wijnaldum either. And as for like specific players, he didn't actually say who was resting and who wasn't. I think people brought up Mo Salah because obviously he has been playing absolutely constantly because he is just Liverpool's best player this season in terms of the goal return that he's bringing. So a few shouts for him resting Mo Salah here and there because obviously the Man United game at the weekend, you want him to be on top form for that. You want him to be firing on all cylinders against them. But it sounds like Mo Salah will be playing in this game. As for how we're actually going to line up, it's going to be Loris Karius in goal. No arguments there. The centre-back pairing, I think it's going to be Matip and Van Dijk because as they put it on the BT Sport commentary at the weekend, it's basically a revolving door next to Virgil van Dijk at centre-back at the moment. Klopp's basically gone Matip, then Lovren, then Matip, then Lovren, back and forth to try and work out what fits best. Personally, I'd prefer the idea of Lovren at the weekend against Man United. I think him up against Lukaku, that's Lovren's dream, playing up against a big centre-forward who likes to be aggressive. It's the kind of game that suits him, so I think we go with Matip in this one. And then either side of him, I think you go with Gomez at right-back. Obviously, Trent Alexander-Arnold's playing at the weekend. I thought that was a little bit surprising. I thought we were going to go with Gomez at the weekend and then use him against Man United as well. But obviously, Trent Alexander-Arnold actually looks like he might be edging ahead of Gomez in the pecking order. Obviously, whether they get picked kind of depends on who the opponent is and stuff like that. But Trent Alexander-Arnold certainly seems to be getting the nod over Gomez when it's 50-50 at the moment. I still think you want Gomez against Man United because he's got that defensive ability to deal with Manchester United. So I think you play him in this game just to kind of help him build up some match sharpness ahead of that. And then obviously we've got the Nathaniel Klein situation. He's coming back to full fitness. He isn't really getting too many opportunities to come into the side because we are at the business end of the season. Pretty much every game matters at this stage. There's not like there's a League Cup tie against lower opposition where we can throw Nathaniel Klein in and help him build up fitness. So I think if anything, this is the only game we're going to have between now and May where we actually have a chance to throw in Nathaniel Klein in a sort of a minimal pressure situation. So I reckon Jurgen Klopp might bring him on around about half time, give him a 45-minute run out and see what he can do. But I reckon we're going to start with Gomez at right back, and then I think you actually go with Moreno at left back because obviously Andrew Robertson been playing an awful lot lately, and I think in terms of fitness, you have to judge every player individually in this kind of situation with the whole midweek weekend thing. I think some players will absolutely benefit from playing a few games in the space of a week. It will help them build up match sharpness and stuff like that. But I think a player like Andrew Robertson who just relies on that hard running, that fast running, that constant energy of pressing people, we're going to need that at Old Trafford at the weekend. And I think the amount of games he's been playing recently with Moreno having that injured period and having only just really come back from injury, and Robertson obviously nailing down his position as Liverpool's best left back at the moment, I think you do need to look for the odd opportunity to give him a rest. And while, like I said, you don't want to rest too many players, I don't think it's too difficult playing this midweek match with our other Premier League games. But I think, like I said, you have to judge players individually. I think Robertson needs a rest and Moreno needs game time here and there because at the end of the day, the guy was having a very good season up until he got injured. So I think he deserves a chance to prove that he still has a part to play in this Liverpool side. So the centre-backs, Matip and Van Dijk, and then the full-backs, Gomez and Moreno. So the midfield then, again, like I said, you've got to judge every player individually, and I think the perfect midfielder for this game is Jordan Henderson because he's had a little bit of an iffy season. He's had a few injuries here and there and hasn't really hit his top form at any point, but he's creeping back into the side on a slightly more regular basis at the moment, and he had an absolutely brilliant performance against Newcastle at the weekend. And if there was only one bad thing you could say about that performance, it's that we don't see it enough. We need more of that from Jordan Henderson. We need him to be doing that week in, week out. That's what you want from your captain and you want from the number 6 in this Jurgen Klopp system. So I think playing Jordan Henderson, more consistency is the key to unlocking that kind of form. So I think the idea of having a midweek game straight after that, just after he's had enough time to recover, is absolutely perfect for Henderson to try and keep up this form that hopefully he can then bring into the game against Manchester United at the weekend. So I think you put Henderson at the base of midfield. I then think you put Emre Can on the other side of him because I think it helps to have Emre Can there to just take a wee bit of the defensive responsibility off Jordan Henderson. Henderson Henderson at times has struggled with the burden of basically playing midfield by himself when the other two midfielders have just bombed forward to join in the fun that is playing in an attacking role for Liverpool. So I think having Emre Can occasionally drop back to do a bit of defensive work really helps out Jordan Henderson and just gets the best out of him in that kind of role. So I think you put Emre Can on that side of him, and then I think you go with Milner on the other side to complete the midfield three, because like I said, treat players individually. I think Oxlade-Chamberlain does need a little bit of a rest because he's in great form at the moment, had a great game against West Ham, had a fantastic game against Newcastle. I think he is nailed on to start in the game against Manchester United as well, but I just think you want him against Man United to reproduce the kind of form that he gave us against Man City, you know, just absolutely going after the ball at all times, not giving their defenders a second to think about what they can do in possession. You need him to have that kind of energy all the way through the 90 minutes, so I think it makes sense to give Ox a wee bit of a rest, maybe bring him on later in the game to make sure that he stays match sharp, because like I said, he's in great form at the moment, but you want him to have a little bit of a rest so he's firing on all cylinders for the United game. So I think you go with Henderson, Can and Milner in midfield, and then the attack, I just can't leave anyone out. I can't leave anyone out. It has to be Salah, Firmino and Mane. I think there's a shout for Solanke there. I think maybe you actually drop out Salah for Solanke, do a bit of a front two and then someone playing in behind, maybe Mane behind two strikers, Firmino behind Mane and Solanke, something like that. I think Jurgen Klopp will probably take off Salah about an hour into the game to kind of make sure that he has enough fitness, because I mean, if he gets injured, we're in deep trouble towards the end of this season. So you've got to be a little bit careful, but without wrapping him in cotton wool and being too careful and potentially sacrificing this result for Liverpool. So that is how I think we are going to line up. As for Porto, they're in pretty decent form at the moment. I mean, since we absolutely hammered them 5-0 on their own turf, they've won every single game in the Portuguese league. I think the line that's been going around is that Porto are absolutely 100% focused on their domestic campaign now. They've pretty much written off the Champions League. They looked at that 5-0 loss and thought, we're not coming back from that. We might as well focus on that. There's this whole deal of them trying to stop Benfica winning their 5th title in a row because Porto are the only team to ever have that record. And I think as Liverpool fans, we all know how precious we used to hold that title record in England of having won 18. So we can sympathise with Porto doing that. But yeah, it doesn't sound like they're really up for this game. I don't think they are going to go for the miracle. The only worry for me, like I said, we can't be too complacent, is if Porto do smell blood. And I think if Liverpool put out a team of kids and reserves and stuff like that, and then Porto get an early goal or two, they might suddenly start looking around and thinking, okay lads, maybe there is a chance here, and they will just absolutely go for it. Because I mean, if you have the opportunity to come back from a 5-0 deficit away from home in the Champions League, you take it with both hands. So I think that is the most important thing for Liverpool at the end of the day, is game management. Unfortunately for us, Porto are missing a few players through injury as well. They had a couple of fellas out for the first leg, Vincent Aboubakar being the main one. Obviously he's their star centre forward, been doing great in the Champions League so far. Really fortunate for Liverpool really that he wasn't available in the first leg. He is still not available for this one, and I think they've lost quite a few other players that were involved in that first leg as well. So I mean, it's positive for Liverpool. The outlook is good, but I think game management is key, and making sure that we just sort of wear the game down a little bit and never let Porto have any sniff that they might be able to mount some sort of incredible comeback. So I'm still backing Liverpool for the win for this game, and here are my 3 reasons why I think they'll get it. First of all, it sounds simple to say, but we are just better than Porto, and this is the kind of stage of the Champions League that really, you know, exposes the men from the boys, I think you could say. You know, you see the other ties that are coming out, like Bayern Munich against Besiktas, Man City against Basel. It kind of filters out the teams that, I mean, no disrespect to them, they've done incredibly well to get through the group stage, but once you get down to the nitty-gritty of the knockout stages, it really is down to just the big teams that are really properly having a go at winning that absolutely gorgeous, massive trophy. And I think Liverpool-Porto has ended up being one of those ties where you just look at it and you think, Liverpool are better, they absolutely hammered them in the first leg, they are the ones who are going to go through. And you look at Liverpool and Porto and you think, who deserves to be in those quarterfinals? It absolutely is us. I mean, Jurgen Klopp gave a bit of credit to Porto in his press conference, said that at the end of the day, you know, they're not hugely worse than us, but Liverpool were just more clinical and more ruthless in that first leg, and that is something that Liverpool have absolutely in spades at the moment. With Mane, with Salah, with Firmino, they have players who are just creating so many chances and finishing so many chances for Liverpool, and I think that is key to who progresses from this tie at the end of the day, and that is why I think Liverpool will once again beat Porto this time at Anfield. And second of all, it's in front of our own fans as well. And I think if the ties had been switched round and we'd beaten Porto 5-0 at home, and then Porto were coming up against us in the second leg in front of their own fans, it might be a wee bit different because they'll look at all their fans around them and think, okay, we better at least put on a show for them. We better give them, something to talk about, something to take home and say, well, we put up a fight at the end of the day. But with that Anfield crowd in front of those Liverpool players, people are talking about Liverpool trying to see the tie out and, not really being bothered about a loss. Those fans don't want to see a loss in the Champions League, no matter what the scoreline is on aggregate. If Liverpool come away from that game and do what Arsenal did against Ostersunds and just sack the whole thing off and lose 2-1, the fans won't be happy. They won't be pleased with what they've seen. So Liverpool, no matter what happens in this tie, they have to perform and they have to try and come away with the result. And I, for one, am absolutely backing them to do it. And finally, like I said, while I'm not expecting too many changes, this is still a big chance for some players in that Liverpool lineup to nail down a spot for the game against Manchester United and also put themselves further up in Jurgen Klopp's plans towards the end of the season. Like I said, I think Moreno is going to start this game, giving him a chance to reclaim that left-back spot at Liverpool. Hopefully, he will absolutely take that chance with open arms because, as good as Robertson is, it's always great to have competition, and hopefully that means that Moreno, if he does play, will have an absolutely storming game. It's kind of the same for the other two defenders as well in that side that aren't Virgil van Dijk. Joel Matip is still trying to nail down a spot next to Virgil van Dijk. Joe Gomez is still warring with Trent Alexander-Arnold for that right-back spot. It's still uncertain with those two players whether or not they'll start against Manchester United. And then you look at the midfield as well. Jurgen Klopp has been rotating his midfield an awful lot all the way through his season. If there's one thing that worries me, it's that we still don't seem to quite know what our best midfield three is. And like I said, I'm not expecting Oxlade-Chamberlain. I'm expecting James Milner to fill in that spot. And James Milner is one of those players who, he hasn't had too many opportunities this season. He hasn't really been in the side on a regular basis. But when he has started, he has really shown Liverpool what he is capable of. And I'm hoping for more of that on Tuesday night, and that will help Liverpool get over the line and secure a win and passage to the quarter-finals of the Champions League. So that is all for today's video. Don't forget to get your questions in for the 5,000 subscriber Q&A that will be coming up on this channel very soon. Put your questions in the comments below if you want to ask me anything about football or the YouTube channel or just anything, to be honest. Just let me know. So yeah, questions in the comments below. Apart from that, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button there. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel over the past few days as well. Don't forget to follow at LFC Focus TV on Twitter, and I'll be back on Tuesday night a little bit later than usual because I'll be watching the game slightly later than its broadcast because I'm going to gig. I won't bore you with the details. But yeah, back a bit later than usual for the post-match video. Until then, bye for now.